Another tech video for you. We're working on the Z today. So what we're doing, ooh, light's a little bright there. Doing electrical upgrades. I'm adding battery cables to the back of the machine to make it easier to boost it, because getting at the battery in this thing is kind of a pain in the butt. I'll show you that right now. So the battery is under the center console between the seats, and that center console is not that easy to get out anymore because my seats don't come out anymore and they're wider at the top, so it's a little tight in here, and I don't really like taking the center console out and then you're trying to get in there and hook booster cables up to it. It's not very nice. So what I've got going on, I'll show you when it's all buttoned up, but I'm gonna have an Anderson plug. That'll be nice when it's done. I've got a nice proper like dust cover mount for the Anderson plug. This thing has a ton of electrical on it. I've got all the lights. There's a aux beam, I don't know if you can really see it in there, but there's an aux beam mega relay which runs my overhead switches, so that's good for, I think it's 1,000 watts. Not that this machine can provide that, but that's besides the point. So this thing has a lot of cables. It's got all the factory wires, like for the starter, computer, all that stuff, and then it's got the factory winch. Here, I'll just show you. So these wires here are mostly, they run to the back of the machine for my turn signals and my power actuated lift gate, all that stuff. So that's what that stuff is. So what I've done here, now this is important for fire safety. Like side-by-sides will catch on fire and off-road trucks, and it's usually caused by poor electrical, crappy wiring for your lights, shorts, stuff like that. So being I have a ton of cables running to this thing, there wasn't enough room on these posts, and it was getting too cluttered. They were getting too close to this mount, and I was basically just out of room. So what we've done here is these two running to the back are for that Anderson plug for my rear winch to boost it, or any like a charge circuit if I need to, or I could boost one of my friends from it. I've got a set of cables all rigged up. I can show you that after. Yeah, and then we've got the front winch, which is one of these cables here. So the front winch comes up. One of these power cables, I think this one here, is for the mega relay under the hood. Front winch, rear winch, and then this goes to the battery. So what I've got done here is, this is the factory cable for the starter, the machine's factory equipment, the engineered spec cabling for the machine. Same with this background. And I've ran 2 gauge up to these posts. So you can buy these posts on Amazon. They're like a stainless steel stud. I've just got it drilled and pop riveted to that back panel. That was the easiest way to do it, because it's kind of hard to get some bolts in there. But this is kind of behind the airbox. It's a nice open space. Not open enough to get a bolt in, but rivets work well. And they're on there pretty good. Like, they don't move. So I've done that, and we've got 2 gauge cable running up to it. So now the other thing for fire safety is cable size. If you run too small of a cable and overdraw the cable, they get hot. And if your cable gets hot, it can melt and start a fire. Hence the fire safety. So 2 gauge cable is good for over 300 amps at 4 feet of distance. I only have 1 foot here, so my amp load that cable can carry is probably getting close to 400 amps. This battery is only a 340 cold cranking amp battery, so it can't even really provide that much power. And the alternator for the machine only puts out, I think it's like 450 watts. So 2 gauge cable, I feel, is more than enough for this machine for a single battery. If I was going to run a dual battery, I would probably run another one of these sets of these posts, and then maybe even break up some of these cables, like just run my winches to the other ones to the second battery. But either way, from the battery would be at least 2 gauge to the second battery and to join the two together. That 2 gauge cable, the rear winch is down to, I think that's 4 gauge. So when running the rear winch, these cables will be the restricting factor, not the one I ran to the battery. And that's the important part. I have enough current running to these posts, because this cable essentially has to supply everything hooked to these posts. Not that I can run everything at the same time. I can run a couple hundred watts with lights and stuff, and maybe the winch, but that should be plenty, because like I said, the battery can't really provide much more than that anyway. But yeah, that's what we're doing here. So we've got our multiple grounds, our multiple power leads hooked to the battery. Now it's all nice and tidy. If I have to get this battery out, it's much easier now, because it's just those 2 cables. It's not 12 cables. I don't have to try and shove everything out of the way to get the battery out. It should pop out pretty easy. So that's that. And I will show you my rear cable as soon as I've got it assembled. So hang on a sec. So I installed it, and it kind of, I'll show you, it runs up in there. I got the air box off. But those are the cables that went through the back wall to the battery. So now, if I need to boost the machine, I can just plug my booster cables right into this plug. Done. So I run DeWalt Tough System cases on my machine, and I can configure them in different ways. I can take these gas cans, flip them over so they're on the top, or I can take them right off, and then I can put a bigger case underneath. So if these are on top or off it, I can put a larger case like this one underneath, or I can put another case on top, or my spare tire. The large case also fits here, so I can configure my bins around. And why that's important is because this is my trail stuff. Kind of give you a quick little peek here. So it's got my air compressor, tire repair, soft shackles, winch extensions, all that stuff's in there. This one's got shackles, snatch block, a bunch of other stuff. But I can change that out because I have this one. And what this is my portable winch. It's usually more stuff in here. Like if I'm carrying this one, I'll put the air compressor and some other stuff in here. Adapter cables. But I use this winch on all my trailers. So it's just got a 1.5-inch receiver. It's not a standard size, it's just 1.5-inch square tube, but it slides into 2-inch quarter wall tubing really well. So I didn't have to try and find hitch receiver or anything silly like that. Works out that 2-inch fits perfectly right between these tubes at the back of the Z. So I have it welded to the tubes on the inside and the outside. Then there's a plate that joins across to the basically the mounts for the control arms, and that just gives it some rigidity. It's way better than trying to hook a shackle around the back to do any kind of recovery or anything like that. There's a bolt-on one you can buy, and all it is just like U-clamps around the tube, and then it bolts to this piddly little tin thing here. And I don't think those U-bolts are very good because they'll dent the tube, and then if you dent the tube will fold. So I think this is better. And why that's important is now I can run my remote winch. I just take my hitch pin. I gotta set you down for a second here. So I just put my hitch pin in, and then I've got my rear mounted remote winch. Now I'm not going to drive around with this on it for lots of reasons. Keep it out of the mud, keep it clean and working good, because like I said, this is for my trailers. I use it for towing cars onto the trailers. I use it in my dump trailer. I have a mount at the front of my dump trailer to pull junk into it. So if I've got something heavy like an engine block that I can't lift, or I just want to get it to the front of the trailer, I can winch it to the front of the trailer with this without needing any fancy equipment. Winches on trailers are handy. They're also handy on side-by-sides. That also gives me a rear recovery point, that receiver. I have a receiver with a clevis that goes in there. I can use it to tie off. I can use this to tie myself off to a tree if I'm winching from the front, if one of my buddies is really stuck. But I figured that'd be a good use of it. And it also works out with my cable install I just did. So this will plug into here. That just plugs into there like that. And a nice cute little plug. I can tie this up out of the way or wrap it around the tube before I plug it in, so it's not a problem. And I can just stick my winch controller up in there or run it right into the cab. Yeah, now I've got this rear port, and I'm going to build a set of booster cables for it. I'll show you that. Actually, I already have a set, though. They use this size plug, which is why I have an adapter, because most of my trailers use these, but I didn't want that big of one on the machine because there's not much room, and I only needed 6-gauge cable. I don't need like a heavy cable running to it. So I could boost me, or I could boost a friend. I have a DeWalt, uses the DeWalt batteries to one of those plugs, and you can use the DeWalt battery to boost it instead of carrying a secondary booster. I always carry a couple of DeWalt batteries with me because I have a DeWalt air compressor. So it works out. I don't have any extra crap. I'm already carrying a battery for my air compressor, so I can use it to boost. And I can use it for any power tools that I have with me. Not that I really carry much for power tools, but yeah, this cute little guy. That's what I was talking about. It hooks up to your DeWalt battery, and then it's got booster cable ends. But I'm going to change it so it's got one of those ends on it, and then I can plug either these grippy things in if anybody else needs it, or I can just plug it directly into my machine and not have to piss around with these. So that's the next project. There we have it. Anderson plug. Those are the pinchy type ends. And then that'll plug into this other Anderson plug to use the battery. Or I can plug this Anderson plug right into the machine to boost my battery. But I do have an adapter plug, so I could plug that into there And then if one of my friends wants to use my remote winch, they can just hook it up to a battery and away they go. So it's multifunctional. You can use these to boost your friends. I use the Anderson plug to boost myself, or the Anderson plug to run my winch, or I can use these to run the winch. You could maybe try to run a dual battery to run the winch, but I highly doubt that would work. You'd probably just smoke your battery. But if you just needed to reel it in quick, just to kind of hold the machine still, that would work, I guess. But yeah, that's my little project for tonight. Wiring stuff. Now I got my little booster pack. Now essentially what this is, those little battery booster packs you get that are about the size of the palm of your hand, and they have little plugs like this on it. That's all it is. It's just a little 3, maybe 4 amp hour lithium battery in them. And they tend to run a bit higher voltage to boost the machine, so you don't run as much amps. So that would work the exact same way on the machine. Being this is 20 volt, probably wouldn't want to leave it plugged in very long. It would be more of a plug it in and crank it right away, and it'll pull down, like it'll probably pull down to 13, 14 volts while you're cranking. It'll crank over really well. And then as soon as it fires, just unplug it. But that would get you started for sure. Trail side. I figured I'd show you guys this, in case you haven't seen my TikToks. These are just rubber locks. And then got my power turned on the dash. Then you just flick the switch. Up she goes. Now these are full too. It'll lift a full tire, no problem. It makes a lot of noise when it's got a full tire on it, but it goes up. Doesn't put up too much fuss. That gives me access to my my lower bin here. Whee! Down it goes. And you just lock her back in place. Hit the trail. I always put this back to neutral, that way it doesn't try and take off on me. But yeah, that's my power gate. I'm really hoping somebody figures out the 1000 watt stator out of the 2024s for the older machines, because I love this machine. I don't want to trade it in on a 2024. I've already done a ton of stuff to it. I really don't want to do that again with another one. But I'd be willing to change the tranny. So the 6-speed swap would be cool. The stator is my biggest concern. That would be the coolest thing. I'm not tapped for power, but I'm close. Like if I run everything, I start running out of voltage pretty quick. I can't run all my lights and my heated seats. I can run all my lights and no heated seats, or some of my lights and my heated seats. So I'm at the limit for power output on night rides, essentially. During the day, it's fine. You can run the heated seats. The regular low beams never have an issue. It stays above 13.5 volts. And that's all good. But the stator would be cool. But yeah, if you're doing any electrical work on your side-by-side, make sure you do it right. Because these things are expensive. And if they catch on fire, that's a bad day. Maybe you want it to burn down for the insurance. I'm not judging. But I don't want mine to catch on fire. I like mine. So yeah, when you're wiring, make sure your gauges are big enough for your cables for what you're doing. You don't want your cables to get hot. Hot cables cause fires. Poor connectors cause fires if they short out. I'll show you what I've got here. So I run these Deutsch connectors. They're waterproof. They work great. They're expensive, but they're worth it. They're a proper connection. And then I run, let's see if we can find some cables here. You can kind of see it up in there. Let me grab a flashlight. You can see all my cabling running up that pillar into the back. And I got a whole bunch of wiring at the back of this thing because it's got interior lights in the roof. It's got the rack lights. It's got my switch panel up here. There's brake lights, turn signals, running lights, electric actuator for my lift gate. There's a 12-volt socket down here, the switch for the lift gate. I added turn signals down low. My radio's up in the roof. All that. There's a ton of cable that runs through this machine. Oh, rear lights. Yeah, like, use a nice tech cable. Here, I'll show you. I got some. You can get it off of Amazon. It's good shit. What's this one? That's battery cable. But like, this is a 4-wire, all encased, so it's nice and weatherproof, and then it doesn't chafe on stuff. Like, this is a smaller 4-wire. I got some that's 3-wire. Most of my machine's 2-wire. Yeah, that's 4-wire. This is 7-wire for like trailer wiring. I buy this stuff in the rolls. I don't have it all out in the garage, just in the house. But yeah, the tech cable works really well. And then you can shrink tube all your ends, and you put your waterproof connectors on, you never have an issue. I've had this thing for almost 3 years now, and I haven't had any electrical failures. Everything works when you turn it on. There's no low voltage problems. It's perfect. Just be mindful of your electrical systems. So that's why I was showing you my cables and my little upgrade at the back. Now I gotta finish putting it back together. Maybe I'll clean my air filter and change my oil. You don't need to see that. I'm sure you guys know how to do that stuff. Is there anything else you guys want to see on this thing? Oh, another upgrade. So while we're looking at upgrades, a lot of people have asked me about this. My little center console cushion. And it just, it's got these little elastic bands, and you just put it around the center console and then pop the console back down. And it stays in there pretty good. I was riding around in Halliburton with a water bottle in there and bashing over the rocks, and it stayed no problem. It worked out good. It's nice and comfy on your arm if you want to lean against it. So that was one of the upgrades. What's another one here? Tablet mount, showed you guys that. And this is my new RAM mount for my walkie-talkie. So I got a Rugged Radios walkie-talkie. The cable's right here, it plugs into it. And that links it to my intercoms. So I've got my PTT buttons. That runs through this and goes out of the machine so I can talk to my friends. So I originally had this on a suction cup mount, and it was right here underneath this thing. So it sat right there, and it worked pretty good. But now that I've got my tablet mount, I had nowhere to mount it. I tried putting Velcro under here and sticking it to that. It didn't hold on, so I had to do something different. So I fished around on Amazon, found these walkie-talkie mounts, and then I got the measurements for the holes, and then found a RAM mount that had the same measurements, and then got all the parts. I got a nice little tube clamp, and that clips on there, and it's adjustable. You guys know how ram mounts work. You can move them around however you want, and then just tighten the wing nut back up and you're good to go. So that's that. If you got a rugged radio or walkie-talkie or anything like that, those are good ideas. They work for these cell phone holders too. This one goes to the cage. Actually, my new cell phone is a little too big for this thing, so I gotta change that up because I've just been running my cell phone in the glove box for now. That's all for tonight. I just gotta build my booster cables to plug into that thing. It'll be all set. Maybe I'll show you that when I'm done.